Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Those are the words from the gathering song we sang together at the beginning of this service. But they're also the title of a painting by Paul Gauguin, who had asked himself those questions since early childhood. Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Those are questions that everyone asks. Every human being everywhere in the world asks those questions. They may ask them in different languages and in different cultural contexts, but they get asked because this is part of the mystery of our existence, and it's part of the beauty and wonder that we exist at all. Where do we come from as Unitarian Universalists, as Unitarian Universalist congregations? Well, 500 years ago, Martin Luther's ideas cracked open Western Christianity, and from those seeds arose the array of diversity and variation and plenitude of thought that we see today in the world. And from that seed also arose Unitarian Universalism. It started 450 years ago, and some of those ideas reached a little village in Poland where the people in the community thought, what we need to do is to live the way that Jesus taught. Now, one of the unique ideas that Unitarianism, it wasn't called that then, but Unitarianism offered people at that time was this notion that every person is a child of God. That's the way they said it then. Today we say every person has inherent worth. They thought if each person is unique and has inherent worth, and God speaks to each person, it's probable that God speaks to each person in a different way. And so, therefore, no one should call another human being's theology blasphemy or heresy. 450 years ago, this community in Poland decided to live according to the values and principles that Jesus taught. They said, what would Jesus do? And one person in the community was the lord of the manor, the landowner, the one who had controlled all of the serfs. And he thought, somehow this idea emerged for him. The seed cracked open and this idea emerged. He thought that if each person has inherent worth, if God treasures every person, then this new community, based on the teachings of Jesus, should include every person's voice. And so he gave up the land and the manor to the community, and the community agreed that the peasants, the serfs, should have a voice in the community's decisions. And so for the first time in human history, there was the unique social experience, imagine this, of peasants speaking in deliberative assemblies as if their views were worthy of respect. And their views were worthy of respect, and they were respected. That community, that radical community of new ideas and a new vision for how to live the teachings of Jesus flourished for 60 years. It became a center for education and learning, a center for publishing books with new ideas and new theology. And then it was burned to the ground, and the Unitarians were driven away from their home and their country, and they began their long journey west, and eventually to America. In America, Theodore Parker, Unitarian minister in Massachusetts, who, by the way, is the source of the phrase that Abraham Lincoln used in the Gettysburg Address, of the people, by the people, and for the people. Lincoln didn't live near where Parker preached, but the sermons were published and Lincoln read the sermons. Parker, in 1841, preached a sermon in which he said that even if Jesus had never existed, the values that Jesus taught would still be valid and transformative. It's about the values. This idea was shocking at the time, but powerful. It continued moving west and opened up to the idea that particular religious doctrine was less important than values that respected the inherent worth of every person. And so our communities came to accept the notion that different versions of the Christian message could be valid because they were valid for each individual person. And we respect the personhood, the inherent worth of each person. And then in the early 1900s, that idea, an idea that we call now American humanism, emerged from this church with the ministry of Curtis Reese. And the idea was it wasn't just Christian theology of various stripes that we would welcome here, but we would fling open wide the doors to people who didn't believe in God, to people who weren't sure, to people who believed in other things. And now, in the 21st century, today, our congregations covenant, the members covenant together to affirm and promote our values that are expressed as the 7 principles. And there weren't always 7 principles. When the Unitarians and the Universalists merged in 1961, there were only 6 principles. And the principles didn't use gender-neutral language. Why were they revised? Because we keep expanding our vision. And what those values do here and now, as they did in that early Polish Unitarian community, is to create a framework for community that helps each human being find meaning and purpose. Thank you. So I want to show you our principles, not all of them, but some, the inherent worth of every person. So no matter what race or religion or country of origin or identity, each person is important. Each person deserves respect for that inherent worth. And acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth. Acceptance is so important. In this picture, you see a white North American woman wearing the colors and the paint from the Hindu celebration of Holi. Without that paint, she could walk in here and you never guess that she honored and celebrated Hindu traditions. And the man on the right, a man wearing a yarmulke, Jewish, and goes home to celebrate Rosh Hashanah with his family in their synagogue. These people, there are so many of people with different beliefs and views, people who are truly different, even though you might not guess from the outside. And they're in our Unitarian Universalist congregations today because of this principle, because we affirm and promote acceptance of one another. We also encourage a free and responsible search for truth and meaning by our processes, whatever processes that seem right to us, whatever searching that seems right to us, as long as our search responsibly respects the inherent worth of every person. And the seventh principle that was added in 1985, justice, equity, and compassion, let's not forget that. That's something, because of the need to seek justice for every person who has inherent worth. Because if every person has inherent worth, we do need to make sure we create the social conditions that allow each person to thrive. Then we have to be committed to this principle. And equity and justice are things we work on both inside these walls and outside in the community. And compassion, the Dalai Lama said, "My religion is simple. My religion is kindness." Yes, compassion is part of our religion. And here's the interdependent web of existence of which we are a part, and only a part. 1985. What an important principle. The gifts that each of you brings to this congregation, you wrote down on little scraps of paper, and then we created a word cloud in the shape of a chalice, listing the gifts. And the gift that you listed most often was love. You put love at the center of this congregation. Love as the central thing that you bring here. And this is the opportunity in our life together for this congregation, each person in this congregation, to share your light and create our vision. Now, sharing the light, each person has a light. Each person has ideas and experiences and insights. And other people gather and we all talk, and there are more ideas and more insights and more. And each person shares their light in conversation together. Many, many people join in, and soon there are many lights. And the vision we create together lights up the world. You might say, but what can we do with that big old world out there where so much is needed? But remember, it's already happened. It's already happened. Our Unitarian Universalist forebears had those ideas, and their village was burned to the ground because of it, and they were driven out. But those ideas found a way to flourish. You can't shut down ideas. And their vision of a community where everyone was respected, where everyone's inherent worth was acknowledged and recognized, is the norm for us today in our Unitarian Universalist congregations. And we are capable of bringing what is the norm for us to the world. It doesn't stop with our social justice efforts and our individual efforts to change a law or create sanctuary. Because the idea that underlies all of this, that everyone has inherent worth, is something that we are constantly bringing into the world. And eventually, these ideas are ideas that grow, that spread. And don't doubt it, because it has already happened. And who knows what the vision is that you will create together? Who knows? But as Rumi said 8 centuries ago, the sweetness of how we talk together is what we bring to the world. And here in this community, for the next month, all of you have the chance to participate in that process of creating the vision. But the question comes, how do we sustain this community? We sustain this community through commitment. Now, that commitment has to include financial commitment. And I saw once a message from a Zen meditation center that announced that it was working with a new economic model. They don't charge fees. Instead, they say, if you value the service that you got, if you value the experience you got, please make a contribution. But that's not a new economic model. That's fee for service. And okay, so they're letting people decide what the fee will be. But that's not new. And that is not what we do here. Because we're not saying, oh, it's a fee for service, so if you thought the sermon was good, then you can pay your fee. No, we're not going to install credit card readers at the doorway so that you can swipe your card as you come in or go out. When your children go to Sunday school, there won't be a card reader at the door so that you can, check them in by making a donation. No, this is not a fee-for-service operation. This religious community is something different. And as those Polish Unitarians knew long ago, it always has been. This religious community it's a project, it's a vision in which we actually participate only if we are fully committed to it. This is not one where you can just be a passerby. This is a vision and a faith that requires your complete commitment. So when you're thinking about making a contribution to this church, to support and sustain its vision, don't give as if you're paying for what you get. Don't give because you might find it embarrassing not to. Don't give because it's an obligation. Don't give just to keep the lights and the heat on, or because your kids are in Sunday school, or because you're grateful that once your kids were in Sunday school and now they're grown and you're grateful. Don't give because of that. Don't give because you like the Zen meditation or the music. It's pretty good music, isn't it? But don't give because of that, or even because Des Moines needs a bold and free religious voice and a beacon for social justice. I should mention that members of the pledge campaign team would be willing to accept a financial commitment made for any of those reasons. I'm certain that there is no litmus test. No pledge will be rejected. But I don't want pledges made for any of these lame, wimpy reasons. Why? Because we can't transform our own lives and the life of the world unless members here are fully committed. We're engaged, especially now, in an act of creation. We're taking the first steps to change our lives and the life of the world. And creating a transformative community requires both a quantitative and a qualitative change in our souls. We're modeling for the larger world how people with widely different points of view about theology can work together to build a community that is truly accepting and welcoming of everyone. Like the landowner in Poland 450 years ago, there are some people who give more because they can give more. But the idea is that everyone gives what they can because it's an expression of the vision to make that financial commitment. And so when I think about this, I recognize that I might need to give something in order to increase my pledge for next year. And I think, well, if that feudal lord can give up property and power, then to create the community I hope to build, I can at least give up designer coffee. And that's what I'll do this coming year. You just watch me. I'll be making it in the kitchen, not going to Starbucks. Think about being a lord of the manor and giving up property and power. But for many of us, the only barrier to giving more generously in support of our life-giving and world-transforming vision is a barrier that is more at the level of designer coffee. What would it take to align all of our lives with our values and with our shared vision? If anyone here is thinking of signing the membership book or making a pledge for next year, please don't do it for those wimpy reasons. Do it because you long to be part of the vision, because you long to participate fully. Do it because you're committed to transformation. I don't know exactly what the vision will be. You are creating it. But I'm guessing that it will be a vision of First Unitarian as a transformative community, as that seed that generates all of this life and love. You put love at the center of your life together as a congregation. If your vision, if that love is to be translated into something that's real, something achievable, something that's not just an impossible dream, but something that really leads us into the future, where are we going? Then all of us have to be committed to the vision today. We have to practice it today as if it already exists. We have to be the change we wish to see. We have to bring the light. We have to be the light. And if the love that you have placed at the center of this community shines like a beacon, if your love sends your light out into the world, what do you think will happen?